Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. This week I have with me Ashleigh Howland, who is of Howland Muscular Therapy, and she specializes in back pain and specifically for equestrians. And we're going to tie in how managing back pain is important for cheerleading. I wanted to have her on because for a number of reasons, but back pain is a very common injury in cheerleading, and I think the work that Ashleigh is doing is phenomenal and will really help cheerleaders to help to manage that as well. Ashleigh and I have a long history of working on different courses together, and she's really kind of taken off and has learned a lot. So, welcome to the Cheer Athlete Podcast, where we bring coaches, parents, and athletes expert tips and advice to help keep cheerleaders healthy, strong, and at the top of their game. Now, let's go. Welcome to the show, Ashleigh. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. We have had a long journey together, years. It's great.
Yeah, it's fun. I love seeing how everybody kind of has gone our own way, but kind of still intermingles.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into this work.
Sure. My personal background is I grew up on a horse farm and I was put on horses before I could even walk. So I grew up in the saddle, had my first like real back injury when I was 11, coming off of a horse in a lesson. And it's been sort of a lifelong quest to figure out how do I get rid of this back pain. For me, it was like sharp spasms that would put me in bed for 3 or 4 days. It was right SI, so right low back was always the temporary or the temperamental area. Neck and shoulder tension, just a lot of just like feeling crummy. And especially when you're 11 to 30. I think being a kid of the 90s, which your cheerleaders may or may not know what that's like. Your older cheerleaders might. Um, it's really hard to have an injury when you're also trying to figure out like what your body is all about, right? Like you're going through puberty, you're going through hormonal changes, you're trying to figure out who you are as an athlete, who you are as a person. And when you have a body, or in my case, a back that like you just don't trust, it has a really big impact on you psychologically, emotionally, in all of the ways. And so pain is not just a physical entity. Like I think that's pretty transparent and pretty clear across all, whether you're working with cheer athletes or horseback riders.
Yeah.
So I went on this quest after college to figure out how do I get rid of my back pain. And it took me to massage school. And I was very quickly quite bored with recovery or with relaxation massage. And so I dove into recovery, into working with athletes. I spent 4 years with the Boston University men's ice hockey team. Um, and that was where it kind of showed up for me that like back pain, and you probably see this, cheerleaders are incredibly powerful, incredibly strong, much like hockey players. These guys were in peak fitness, abs for days, deadlifting, explosive power, and they almost all of them had back pain. So back pain is not a strength issue. I think that is also like sort of a universal truth. It is not about strong core. It's not about strong back muscles. Those things help, but what is the defining thing, the foundational piece that people are missing? And that's sort of what my quest took me towards. Um, which is how I think we met, because we both
Yeah.
realized that chasing pain never gets you the answer.
Right. Yeah. So you've evolved and have kind of gotten away from straight on massage therapy. I'm not sure how you incorporate that now, but um, what what does your assessment look like now, or like what assessment and then treatment, I guess, and so how would
Yeah.
you look at that differently now?
Yeah. I don't do any hands-on. My coaching is all virtual, which is really lovely because I can be up in Canada, even though I'm from Massachusetts. I can be anywhere and work with clients. Um, I look at how people move. So I look at sort of how they're standing, how they're moving, like are they comfortable with touching their toes, doing a not a full back bend. I have to modify that for your audience, but the average person's first step of a back bend, looking at how their spine is basically helping distribute their body's weight across the length of their spine. And when you have a sharp hinge point where you can see like a back should have an even, it should be fairly even, a C shape or a banana shape. Um, and when you have these like really flat spots or you have these really sharp curves, that's an area where the back has said this is either too mobile or too stiff and it's protecting. So I look at how people move, I look at how they're standing, whether they have an arched low back, really hollow low back, hunched shoulders, dragging their shoulders back, whether their chin juts forward. There's a lot of things that just how people move and stand in space can tell you about like where their body is holding compensation. And then the big component is how people are breathing. And that's always, I have a hard time saying like I do breath work and biomechanics or whatever, because people think breath work or breathing work and think, oh, I don't want to meditate, or I'm already really good at meditating. And I don't come at it from a breathwork perspective. I come at it from a breathing mechanics perspective. So how you breathe actually does matter. And I know people are probably like, are you serious? I have to worry about macros, protein, moving, 10,000 steps, my workouts, and now I have to worry about how I'm breathing. Luckily, you're already breathing 22,000 times a day. So with doing a few different tweaks, we can actually get you building what we call intra-abdominal pressure, or your internal pressure system, which is going to support your body from the inside out with almost every breath you take.
And so, I know I have the same pushback to, most of the time I'd be like, I breathe all the time. And yes, you do, you're breathing, but, and I know this happens in cheer, and I'm sure it happens with every, you know, equestrians and hockey players, like we tend to get in so we have, our routines are 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. And we are going through that entire time and lifting and tumbling and jumping and yelling. And we rarely exhale and actually take a full on breath, or an inhale. Like it's very shallow. And I don't think it's just strict to cheerleading, but I think a lot of us get around through the day and like don't actually take that full inhale and exhale to actually help to support it, which number one is important on oxygen exchange and the health, the living factor of it. But as you're talking about, the biomechanic wise and how that creates intra-abdominal pressure and creates stability.
Yep.
So can you describe what intra-abdominal pressure is for like layman people, and why that's important? Like, why do you want pressure in your abdomen?
Yeah, totally. My really macabre example is, do you remember the Titanic submersible from a few summers ago? Do you remember that story?
Oh, the people that died
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I shouldn't laugh. I'm not laughing at them. It's a
Douglas, yeah,
really dark example.
yeah.
The submersible is supposed to be built to withstand ocean pressure when it goes down the 2 miles, whatever the Titanic is down, right? So the reason that it didn't work is because the pressure outside the submersible was too much, and the pressure on the inside holding it together collapsed. A less grotesque example is a basketball. If you try to bounce or dribble a deflated basketball, I don't know anything about basketball. I don't watch basketball. I could care less about basketball, but the ball is the point.
Yeah.
If you try to dribble a deflated basketball, it makes a sort of sad plop sound and doesn't do very much. It doesn't roll, it sort of collapses. You're not going to take a vegetable peeler to fix the deflated ball. That would be ridiculous. You're going to grab a bike pump and pump it up so that the pressure inside to out can withstand the gravity and the pressure from the outside in. I say vegetable peeler because that to me is what people are doing when they are stretching or foam rolling or getting a deep tissue massage or gua sha-ing or whatever other thing they're doing to get rid of tight muscles. Because tight muscles, as our combined knowledge knows, are your body's red flag. Your body saying something is unsafe, something is unsupported, something is unstable. I don't want you to get injured. I'm going to put this block from your movement, your comfort, whatever. I'm telling you that there's something wrong. Please listen. We have been trained and as I think as customers and consumers and practitioners, that is the problem. The tight muscle is the problem. And I think through our different coursework we've done together, we've realized that the problem is the lack of support, actually, that is creating the tension. And so whether you are a PT or a cheerleader, a former massage therapist who doesn't really have a clear title now, who works with horseback riders, we're not going to chase the pain. We're going to try and get to the root of the problem. And for my clients, the root of the problem, most of the time, is that they are lacking that core support. So the area below, I'm talking about the area below their belly button and above their pubic bone, center of gravity. I don't know which chakra it is. I should. Whatever your belief system is, that's the bottom of your spine. So your lumbar spine. And we are working to support the spine and the muscles keeping the spine upright from the inside out, using air pressure that supports you from the inside out, pressurizing you against gravity from the outside in. And we do that through breathing, not only breathing into our lower bellies, but also building better actual core engagement, genuine core engagement, because some of our biggest core muscles attach to the ribs, the lower ribs that can actually move when we breathe. And so when we train people to breathe better, we teach them to support themselves better, and they can then do that with every breath, or at least like a couple hundred of the thousands they do every day.
Right. And so in doing that, they're creating better reactive tension, or better reactive support, so that when they move, they have less risk of making a muscle tighten up because it's gripping against something or pulling against something.
Right. Yeah, your body wants to stay alive. It wants to stay upright and alive. That is its goal. That is its function in life. We put a lot of other things into that, right? We come up with all these different things we should be doing. Mostly your body wants to be alive. And to do that, it wants to protect your organs and your spinal column. And so when you are, through no fault of your own, unless you're doing something like really nuts, like maybe being a cheerleader or a horseback rider, you're not intentionally trying to threaten your spinal cord, but some of our sports encourage such behavior.
Right.
That's
right.
okay.
Right.
It means that when we have back pain, and I'm talking about like more muscular or even like disc dysfunctions, it's because those muscles are having to work so hard to lock down the system enough that it doesn't feel threatened. And so I can't speak to the cheerleading body, but with a horseback riding body, like you are upright on a very large animal that has its own fight, flight, or freeze response. And when you are coordinating movements with your horse, you are also trying to figure out like what your body's doing in space that will always affect, but not affect too much what their body is doing in space. And so if you are unbalanced, or you are tilting, or you're rotating, and these are problems that we have on the ground, it doesn't matter if you're a rider or a flyer, you have the issue on the ground, it then becomes exponentially more difficult and interfering with your sport when you're doing your sport. And so by building this intra-abdominal pressure to support you from the inside out, you give your body that extra boost. You help those muscles not have to do multiple jobs. Like you wouldn't want, I'm going to screw this up, so apologies. You wouldn't want your flyer to also be a base, right? That would be impossible.
No, I mean,
No.
it's not common, and typically the requirements are very different. But I
Okay.
found the best flyers have been bases. So at some
Okay.
point,
Okay. But you wouldn't want to do it at the same time. That would
right,
not be
right,
helpful.
right,
Right?
right.
That would
Yeah,
be a bad
yeah.
idea. So we don't need our back muscles to be holding us upright and acting as our like front core muscles. They can't do both. That's when you get a muscle that is like, I'm done, I'm going on strike, and you have a spasm, or you have a disc saying, I'm doing the best I can, and now I'm going to have a blowout, and now you have a herniation or a rupture. Or insert other example here. Like if you fall, if you do have an accident, your body is still going to try and protect your spinal cord. And so then you get the compensations after the fact of like, well, I landed on my left shoulder, but now my right low back hurts. And so what we're basically doing in my practice is rebuilding the support system from the inside out. We're not rebuilding, we're fortifying. We're not taking down the whole house. We're just making it a little bit more storm worthy. To give the muscles space to do their actually intended function. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's yeah. It trying to allow them to work as they're supposed to, and not
Yeah.
necessarily having to compensate for something else, creating a bigger issue.
Yes.
And what um what I find, like what I perceive as a common postural dysfunction between horseback riders and probably more bases is that extended position where maybe the abdominals are a little bit more on stretch and the lower back muscles are shortened, and that inability to necessarily get into that centered position.
Yeah.
Whereas like with the flyers, you're talking like they well, we do tend to go ribs up and butt out, which you know I I've been preaching about, keep the ribs down and lift your sternum up. But the bigger risk, I think, comes from, well, maybe because they can't get there, but they're trying to crank on their leg to get an extended, and then they're hyperextending their back at the same time, or hyperflexing and don't have that stability. And so I liked your point of you have to own it on the ground, you have to own for your position. Both, just like the horse and the rider, a flyer and a base need to be in control of where their stability is for them, because it's going to interfere with what the other is doing. So I think
Yeah.
those are great examples on how to correct that. Can you
Yeah.
give an example of, like, so do you just sit there and, okay, just breathe? Like, you like, how do you, like,
Yes, that's it.
what's your,
Just breathe.
yeah,
Yes.
get over yourself and just
Um,
breathe, you'll be fine.
just breathe. Yeah. Yeah, that works really well. It's like being told to calm down.
Yeah.
I walk people through a breathing assessment to kind of figure out where they're naturally breathing to. Are they breathing into their chest? Are they using their neck and shoulders? Are they breathing into their belly, upper belly, lower belly? Are they breathing into their ribs? Are their ribs moving at all? Their lower ribs, not their chest ribs. And then I get to teach them. The beauty of doing this virtually is that I can't be hands-on with them. And so I get to teach them. Well, I don't know if they think it's the beauty of it. I think it's the beauty of it. I get to teach them what their body is actually talking about, like what tension feels like versus pain versus whatever other symptom, subjective versus objective issue they're having. So I will teach them what tension feels like in the rib cage and how to clear that, and then how to start visualizing and feeling for rib movement. Because we want the lower ribs to move first, the lower belly below the belly button to fill second, and then the upper belly to fill third. We don't want chest, neck, shoulders to be involved with breathing. Unless you are at the end of a 2-minute and 30-second cheer routine, in which case you
Right.
are winded and you need to use accessory muscles, or you come off a riding cross-country course in which you've been going flat out for 12 minutes straight, jumping 15 obstacles, and you are also winded. And the one thing I did want to say about that is, like, I don't expect people in their actual competitive moment to be thinking about their breathing. I think they have plenty of other things to be thinking about. The point is, and the thing I love with riders is that we're going to train it like they're training their dressage test or their stadium jumping balance or whatever. I'm having people go through the learning how to do this skill and to practice this skill on the ground and then on their horse. And then if they have a competition coming up, then we're going to break down their dressage test or their approach to breathing while jumping. and they're going to practice these things at home. So they build that muscle memory. Um, because no, they don't need to be thinking about this while they're
Right.
competing. That's
Right.
bonkers. But if you it's like anything, if you practice it enough and you build that muscle memory and it becomes part of just how you do the thing, then you're that much more prepared for going into the ring or going into the
Right.
arena, or going onto the mat. So I think that's where like having somebody who is doing a preseason work more so with riders or with cheerleaders, it's not something. I mean, you can obviously come to me in the middle of a show season and be like, I have back pain. Like, okay, we've got you covered. I can help you.
Right.
But like then also let's look at the continuity plan and say, look, let's get you out of this acute stage, or let's get you through the first 6 sessions, and then figure out what is it that you want to be working on to make sure this doesn't happen again. And if you do want to do some breathing work before you ride or before you compete or before you cheer, fantastic. Let's make
Right.
everybody
Right.
do some breathing work. Cool. Here for that. But I think it's about building a very simple, easily integrated daily practice that's where you get the results, right? It's the consistency over quantity.
Right. I think we preach all the time. Um, when you're, even if you're not running your team full out, but you're running a section full out, you got to practice it the way you're going to perform it, and what you put on your practice mat is what you're going to carry over out there, because the muscle memory and your body learns, and it
Mm-hmm.
is much easier to get that to carry over.
Yeah.
Um,
We have
and
to be careful with riding because horses will learn their own. So dressage is when it's the like choreographed maneuvers where you have to do a certain, everyone has the same test until you get to a certain level, and so everybody like enters it one letter, and then you do like a circle here, and then you do something different over here. And you have to similarly, you have to do it in segments because your horse will learn the test. And if you change levels, they may come in and be like, well, I know I halted this letter. You're like, no, keep going. We have to halt somewhere else now. And so you practice again, like you're going to practice your test in segments, and you're going to practice your breathing. Like if you know you're going to pick up a trot at letter B, I know that doesn't mean much for your listeners, but if you're going to change from a walk to a trot here,
yeah,
I want you to practice your exhale so that you have an exhale into that transition, before you run and do a bunch of gymnastic exercises. I don't know if
right,
that's right.
yeah,
You're going to take that inhale at the beginning and exhale your way through some of them. And you want
yeah,
to be able to build that exhale to the point where it can sustain you at least for the first couple of maneuvers. So you have that stable core, that supported body, and you're that much more prepared to artfully fling yourself across the mat.
right. And that's exactly, that's what I wish. I don't think choreographers need to do it, but I wish coaches would program into a routine as like, okay, you have this pause over here right before you're going to go for your pass. Like right as you go to hurdle, you inhale, and then you're learning to blow out, and breathe
Yeah.
out, or vice versa. I'm starting to learn that, like, whenever it's happening, but at least you're not holding your breath through a whole diagonal of the tumble pass, in which case at the end you're like dizzy and lightheaded, because not only just because you spin, but you're upside down, but you're not, you're lightheaded from not lack of oxygen. So
Right.
I think programming that in, or right before you set to build up a pyramid, or before you cradle, any of that kind of stuff, I think like working that in there and learning how to do that, I think could be hugely helpful in
Yeah.
um, in reducing back pain specifically.
Yeah.
We
Sure.
try.
Yeah. And I can imagine if you're a base, practice breathe, and for any of them, but practice breathing in the position you have to hold, because it's very different to breathe anatomically correctly to create that support when you're in a hands and knees position versus when you're standing versus when you're upside down. Like those are very
Right.
different. You're asking a lot of your body to do it, to breathe correctly for support, if you don't practice doing it in those positions. Like when I try and do a plank at the gym versus a deadlift, like the breathing is different. I
Right.
want it to do the same thing. I want it to support my body, but I have to practice it in different positions because you're going to have different limitations depending on what the muscles are also being asked to do.
that's a great, uh, that's a great advice on that. Like you have to own it in each of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like most people I see in the clinic are in a pretty acute pain. And
Hmm.
so I start with teaching basic breathing on the ground. I don't think I do a well enough job in translating that into higher up activities, something I'm working on. But I think that's a key thing. Like you learn it when you're in whatever 90-90 position, in a prone position, and then, you know, like so a prone breathing position might mimic a handspring, or, you know, and so then you take it up
Hmm.
into that, and
Hmm.
make that progression from there. I think that's a key piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of taking, and I know it doesn't sound fun, doesn't sound sexy, but like I used to make the joke, like, I don't name another relationship in your life where you don't want stability. Like I
Yep.
know that it doesn't sound fun or interesting, but you don't
Right.
want to have like dramatic, unreliable finances or mental health or
Right.
relationship. And so working on the foundational stability and support issues of your body, like pretty important to me.
Yeah,
It feels pretty
exactly. Exactly.
transformational for the rest of what's going on.
Right.
Um, if you have a bad roommate situation, it's going to really impact the rest of your like quality of life, the way you sleep, the way you want to come home, the meals you cook because you're in and out of the shared space. Um, Maybe you're wasting the money because you're trying to stay somewhere else and you've got this apartment. It's like this very basic foundational thing um, that has a huge impact on the rest of your quality of life. And I do think that going back to the basics and working on those. So whether you're, like you said, starting with face up breathing or face down breathing, and then building that into 90-90, into dead bug, into a prone position, into a plank, into a deadlift or a squat. Yeah, it's not fun. And most
Yes.
people think that's really like annoying and boring. But if you do it, then if you don't do it, then I think you have more propensity for injury.
Right. You touched in the beginning about tight muscles and how the intra-abdominal pressure will affect and create, you know, the feeling of tightness. Um, when so I'm thinking on that, you know, I hear a lot that cheerleaders want to increase their flexibility, whether it be for jumps or for flying. Um, and I think for I think you can make the case, although I don't so much hear bases saying I want to increase my flexibility, but they want to be able to get lower into a squat, which is creating better mobility. And all of
Hmm.
that can get affected by having better intra-abdominal pressure and effectively
Yeah.
breathing. Can you give an explanation for like why, like how
Hmm.
most of them are like, I got to stretch into my splits more. Or I'm just going to spend, you know, an hour every night stretching more.
Oh
But
my God. Sorry.
how I know. um
Please don't do that. It's
you
not
know,
helping.
I think people are starting to, you know, get the memo that like, and maybe it's just a matter of like it's a wording thing, and like instead of saying I need to exercise, it's a better stretch. But that's what I hear is stretching and flexibility. And
Hmm.
so how does learning how to breathe effectively translate into better flexibility, which
Hmm.
is also going to actually, we know, going to be more stable and
Yeah.
create that stable
Yeah.
platform.
It comes back to helping the body feel safe while you are doing things that are potentially unsafe.
Yeah.
um, if your body is, if your hamstrings are really tight and you do all of the stretches that Google and AI and Instagram and TikTok can tell you to do, and you're still having tight hamstrings, you don't have a flexibility issue, you have a stability issue. Um, it's not about, I mean, there's so many ways to answer this. It's not about, let me say this also. There are muscles that are tight because they are too short, and there are muscles that are tight because they are too long. And if you are just going and stretching without figuring out which is which or what you are working with, you are fighting a losing battle. Because those of us who have ponytails know, if you stretch a hair elastic too much, eventually it will snap. And in the body, that's called an avulsion fracture. And we would prefer you not to have that. So if you can put your nose through your knees and your hamstrings are tight, they are not too short. They are probably too long. And what you need to do is activate them and remind them that they have a shorter range of motion as well. So in that case, I wouldn't be stretching. I would say, let's work on actually teaching them to go shorter, right? Muscles have a range of motion. If you do a bicep curl and bring your fist up to your face, that is a short bicep. If you extend your arm, that is a long bicep. And if you cannot do the whole range of motion, your muscle will feel tight, or your muscle will feel tight, and therefore you cannot do the whole range of motion. So before you just go and stretch or foam roll or deep tissue or tennis ball or lacrosse ball or get some Theragun, whatever creation we're coming up with now to release tight muscles, figure out why they're tight, because they're probably telling you something that you just don't know how to interpret. And that's not your fault, because you're not an anatomy person. That
Right.
is completely normal. But talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. Let me also be like very clear. I don't think that breathing alone is going to fix tight muscles. That if I were to show you my car keys, they are not a Lamborghini with a super yacht. If breathing could fix all the things, I would not be here. I'd be in my yacht in Bali. Breathing is going to create support for your muscles and your spine and your skeletal system, which I think of that as the foundation for movement. Support and stability, then mobility, right? Like, you can't build a house without a foundation. So the tight muscles and the stretching, I think that if it is an issue that you have to keep treating again and again and again and again, we have come to think of that as normal. It's not normal. It is your body undoing the work that you're doing because it's not the right work. Like, I know that's like irritating and complicated, and finding the right person to help you with the problem. Luckily, whoever's listening to this podcast has found Laura and myself, and therefore you're on the right track to find the right people who know how to deal with this problem differently. But if you have to keep treating something, and this is like, as a massage therapist, like, it was better for business with PT. It's better for business if somebody comes in every week for their deep tissue massage. That is money in your pocket. But if they have to keep coming back because they cannot function without that treatment, the treatment is not helping. The treatment is surface level, making them feel better. It's not actually addressing the issue. And I think it is a practitioner education and then a consumer education issue that we have not quite caught up and updated our understanding of the body to address that issue.
Yeah, I do think we're making slow waves, but
Yeah,
you know, it's one thing I agree. I don't think just breathing alone is going to help stretching, but I think if you can incorporate, like we were talking about, you incorporate some of the breathing techniques before, either I try to have people do their foam rolling and stuff first, and then come in, and because then you have it out of the way, and whatever you released, we're gonna build some stability on there. I think you can make a case either way. But come in and just start to learn the techniques. And as you get into your warm-ups and your mobility routines, it's getting you ready to go into cheer practice, and you're starting to build, like, you have that foundation, and you've decreased some tension through the body that may allow you to move safer and easier. And the other piece, like, I think that I really, because I see a lot of people in clinic that, we push through and we like, oh, try to squat, we retraining a squat, and a sit to stand and just getting lower into the squat. And like, they hold their breath in whatever aspect they're going in. But as they learn how to not only adjust their body to make it so it fits their body, but also use their breath to help them with the squat, then they have a more solid core. They can get into it, and and their hips open up, and it's better. And so I don't think with anything you can say, this is the fix for everything, but taking pieces of it all can help to blend a lot in making everything feel better, for sure.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's the start comes from, are you holding, are you actually creating a solid foundation there? So,
yeah.
I could talk this stuff all day, so I want to respect your time. What do you have any programs available right now that people or anything they can go and look at, like that is just easy for them to come and find? And where would they connect with you, and how would they find that?
Yeah, awesome. I'm on a little bit of a social media break right now, but my Instagram is Howland Muscular Therapy. I do have an intro session, which is a 90-minute full assessment, movement, posture, breathing, and then you come out with 2 to 3 corrections. I do work with horseback riders, but I'm also very happy to work with, anybody who wants to, anybody's intrigued by what we've just talked about. Welcome to my soapbox. Also happy to just do like a 20-minute free chat if people have questions. That is all on howlandmusculartherapy.com. You can book a strategy call pretty much anywhere on the website. There's links all over. And then there's a specific back pain program. And then my horseback riders have a different program that is same protocol, but has more like riding specific exercises to like involve your horse and to practice in the saddle. Yeah, so the back pain, like just back pain program is called Get Back Your Back. And then Equiform is the horseback riding component that has its back pain, its posture, position, performance, and integration with your actual equine partner.
Very cool. A lot of good stuff. And as you can tell, Ashleigh's an excellent teacher. So definitely check her out. All that info will be in the show notes. I'm really psyched that we got a chance to talk, and we'd like to talk and meet up sometimes, but I like talking shop with you too, and picking your brain. So I appreciate it.
Same. Thank you.
Everybody, thanks for joining us today. And we're going to end. I always have these sayings that I have at the end. And my very first one is, don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. And that, and it's in and of itself, if you take that into your exercise routine, and just play with it and see what it feels like and see where your restrictions are. And that's your starting point. Because like Ashleigh said, finding the awareness of it is the first step to making a change. So thanks for joining us today. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher used to say, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.